And you guys have a good relationship? You feel like she's old?
What?
Olivia supports my decision.
You should ask her mom. I've met her mom. She's a very nice woman. What can you do?
Can't turn the clock back.
Yeah. So, is this what they're talking about? Kids having babies, or is there something else on the table? Alec?
About why quantify things, right? Human qualities not
Example?
the wit is common. It's cruel.
It's what?
Cruel. Or the wit is joyful.
Martel, how are you doing? Good. I don't know, to be honest. All I know is that some years ago, I used to go to Yosemite and just stay there for months, like a tiny little hole. During winter time, where the snow blankets the entire area, and once in a while, the moon is out and it's full, and it has this like blue glow to it, and it just colors the entire forest, and you feel as if like just amazing, you know. I mean, everything gets romanticized. You kneel, you cry, you scream, and no one's there to hear you. But there is just such a majestic feeling that through nature you can have access to something. I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's joy. But I suppose we are conduits for a lot of different feelings and emotions and thoughts. It's a great question. Maybe you can ask your anthropology instructor if you ever take one. Hello, hello, hello. So, yeah. There was a guy many years ago, his name was Auguste Comte. He was one of the fathers of sociology. Anyways, anyone else? Sure, Ashley.
Were you watching the show White Lotus?
My TV doesn't work.
Okay.
And if it does work, it's taken over by the kids. Why?
Well, the show just wrapped up. Like everyone but you was watching it.
Okay.
And something that I noticed about it was this like overarching theme of belief systems, and not necessarily like organized religion. I'm a Christian, or I'm Jewish, or I'm a Buddhist, but like the things that we center our lives around, and the things that kind of like our ethos, you know? And I guess my question is, can you get anywhere without knowing what that is, without having a belief system? And are these belief systems set in us, or can they change?
So, I was born in a Muslim country. It's very conservative, very reserved. So when usually people have like dreams that they can categorize as sacred, they usually have dreams about Muhammad. If you happen to have been born in a Christian environment, there's a good chance, and you've read the Bible a few times, there's a good chance that you're going to have dreams or visions of Jesus. If you happen to have lived in, say, Nepal or India, there's a good chance that should you, say, pursue the path towards wisdom, and if you've read the Dhammapada, if you've read the Bhagavad Gita, there's a good chance you'll either dream about Krishna or you'll dream about the Buddha, and so on and so forth. If you've had a traumatic experience, whether it's formative years 0 to about 7 or 8 or thereafter, where you were 18, you fell in love, things didn't work out too well for you, and you had to do therapy for like 10, 15, 20 years. And then at the end, you come to realize that, relationships could be profoundly dangerous, so you should always be cautious. They become the very foundation of who and what you are. They don't need to be religious, they don't need to be philosophical, they just need to be reinforced again and again and again and again, and they become a GPS to who and what you are. Now, there are two parts to you. There are the physical and the emotional and the psychological. So the physical is kind of like you stay in this room, you hear some ideas, and you begin to think philosophically. You take a geography class, you begin to think about stones. You take an astronomy class, you begin to think about stars. And so what happens is through the physical medium, you get specific kinds of emotions and thoughts, and then eventually like behavior, like you go and sit and read a book about this and that. When you get to the psychological aspect, so the emotional and the physical kind of make up your personality. You can hang on to them for a few days and then you'll let them go because they don't really give you that much value. They're good for pleasure for a day or two, but eventually they'll just evaporate. Psychological is very, very different. They are what we call your essence. They are your soul. They are who and what you are. So what you realize is that for like 50 years, say something happened to you at the age of 10 or 12 or maybe 5, and so you become a CEO to a company, you get married. I'll tell you a story. I had a friend, and I think maybe I've shared this. I had a friend from Afghanistan, a very attractive young woman, but something had happened to her around the age 11 by a relative of hers. So she moved to New York from Afghanistan, and she came to Chicago. She came to realize that since no one believes what she believes her about the incident that took place, and something that now begins to live inside you, but it's unprocessed. So she said, well, I'm going to do this then, from the age like 12, 13. I'm going to go out with men, young boys, and I'm going to have them fall in love with me the way I fell in love with my uncle. And then I'm going to exploit them. And once I realize they have taken the bait, I have them, I have their heart in my hand, then I will walk away, crush them, the way I was crushed. So she did that for a number of years. And then she came to a certain place where she said, I want to go to school and become a doctor of sorts. So she went to Davis. And then she did her internship in Highland Hospital. And she was able to distract herself and her life for a number of years. And it was a healthy distraction. At the age of 27, she got married, saying to herself or assuming that if I was to get married, hopefully, the thing that took place, that's part of my psychology, who and what I am, will eventually disappear. It didn't last very long. About 3.5 years later, she divorced. But her divorce was very interesting in this sense. She goes in to do a surgery, Kaiser, and she runs into a Persian who was also an intern from Los Angeles. Now, one of the things that happen to you when you have trauma or an experience that you can categorize as traumatic is your ability to love, your ability to trust, your ability to have faith. You kind of second guess yourself and you take one step forward, 10 back, okay? And so you're always fearful. And you're not doing this because there's something like you're stupid. You do this because of protective reasons, okay? And they're valid, justified, fully. And what she wanted, I suppose, most of her life was to really just openly fall in love, to trust, to have faith. And at a certain point, when she went to the surgery, she looked at the sky and she said, oh my God, I'm married, I shouldn't be feeling this way, I shouldn't be thinking this way, but I do. What do I do? She goes back to her office, calls her boss and says, no, I can't do surgery today. This days pass and she forgets about the incident. Another day comes by, she's in the surgery room and this man walks in. There's no escaping, And they work together for about 8 hours. They talk. They go to her office and they do it. A few months later, her marriage is dissolved. The guy goes back to Los Angeles. She's broken. She loses about, I think, 50 pounds. She gets depressed. And the point I'm trying to make is the following. You can be a Christian and then you can become an atheist. At a certain point in your life, you will go back being a Christian. You can do whatever you want to distract yourself from certain realities, from the foundation of who and what you are. You can attach yourself to these personality branches. I'm a this, I'm a that, but eventually there comes a point where you just fall back to where you've always been. Now, and the thing about these belief systems is that they will do whatever because they are living organisms, and they will do whatever they possibly can to kind of survive. They'll camouflage themselves, they'll justify in a very cunning and clever way. And again, they do it for protective reasons. And they are a GPS to your life, and there is nothing wrong with it, when you consider, for example, Donald Trump, for a moment. So he has a really awful relationship with his father. Then his mother, for the most part, is absent. Then his brother is a drunk. And so he's really an absentee father. His businesses don't run well. His books are authored by different people. He goes through women like water. And what you have is a man, if you look at his life from the time he was born, it was always chaotic. And now he becomes a president. Okay. Now, it's going to be very, very difficult for someone who has had a chaotic past to all of a sudden become a decent human being. It doesn't work that way. Okay. And so if you have paid attention to the way he runs himself, runs his mouth, runs his business, i.e. the country, it's always messy. It's always messy. It's because that's what he is. Now, you can always change the branches. In other words, if you don't like this class, you can take a geography class and have different sets of emotions and thoughts. Those you can do. If you don't like this boyfriend, you can choose a different boyfriend. Okay. Your essence, your soul, the beliefs that hold you together, the trauma that lives inside you, that's going to be very, 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 very difficult to change. Very difficult. I have had some of my students I've known for about 25 years. I no longer hang out with them, but what's interesting is most of these students, former students, were Americans. Okay. They came to our gatherings, our music gatherings, for maybe 15 years, almost every single weekend. And they would come to my house maybe 2-3 times a week. They were never able to really understand and observe the Persian etiquette, even though they were around us all the time. Some even went to Iran. Some even learned how to speak Persian, read Persian, sing Persian. But the basic etiquette, it remained Western. Okay. After about maybe 17 years, she comes to my house and says, Amir, what should I bring to your house next week when I come in? And then for the next 2 years of her visiting us from Grass Valley, she would come with a bag of groceries, but it took 17 years. Okay. This is a very, very like minor adjustment, a minor change. Okay. Eventually, she went back to being who she's always been. Western etiquette, unaware of how different cultures work, despite being, immersed in them. So, so when it comes to belief, it's very difficult to change, unless you have one trauma that enters into your life, and it can be good or bad, doesn't really matter. And this trauma fights with this other trauma, okay? And then eventually one gets to the top. But essence you can't change. I mean, once something lives inside you, it's very difficult. It's like cancer, okay? The way you view relationships will always remain the same. The boys you go out with, they will change in body, but without belief system, you become an empty container. And the problem with being empty is that you don't have a GPS for your day. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you believe in. In times of crisis, you don't know what to do. Imagine, God forbid, if you were to get into a fight with your companion, and she'd pack up and leave, and you go home to an empty house. All you have are memories, but memories have no physical containers, so they begin to haunt you until you get really depressed. And in depression, there is nothing to hold on to. I mean, that's what depression really is. It's an emptiness of you. You stand before a mirror and you can't recognize who and what you are and what you need to do. So you just sink lower and lower and lower. So. Good luck with the babies. Anna.
I guess, I don't know, like we were saying at the end, I feel like, is it really even like possible to not have a belief system in some way? Even if you are stuck in depression or like lost all these things in your life, I feel like there's always going to be something that you believe.
No, I think if you are severely depressed, you just lay in bed. And there comes a point where you will have suicidal thoughts. And what is suicide but the end of everything? You look nice.
Oh, thank you.
I think all of us have moments of emptiness that we use as sources of creativity, whether it's writing or dancing or singing or hiking. But prolonged emptiness, especially if it's not filled with creativity, can be kind of depressing and frustrating. Yeah, emptiness doesn't work too well. Even though people, on YouTube, they sit and they say, yeah, you should empty your mind. No, that's stupid. Unless you happen to be highly creative, that's a different story. Da Vinci, the great artist, had once argued that great artists have the ability to empty themselves at will and then allow creativity to come in, the muses, so to speak. But for us commoners, regular, normal, puny beings, no, it's disastrous. Next time you like someone and you want to exact some promises from them, do you like me? Are we going steady? Imagine if they looked at you and said, let's just go with the flow. See how that makes you feel. Yeah. Are we done? Carmen? Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to talk about your video on Dante. I guess as I was watching it, towards the end, I started to get this feeling of, you say a few times throughout the video that anything humans touch, they destroy, they ruin. Basically, that we're just pretty much doomed in that way. And I think I started to wonder if it was, if that was so much the case as, I don't know. I feel like we have so much shame about ourselves that we project anything we have contact with. We project our shame onto that instead of actually ruining it. I think we ruin it for ourselves because, for example, in like Dante's union with
Sure.
half of it is her and half of it is him. That's how I see union, I guess. It's like two forces are coming together. Is it so much that by being involved in that union, we're ruining it or we're ruining something, or is it that we actually can't accept that something beautiful that we have taken part in? I don't know if that makes sense.
Sorry. Trying to remember a poem. So let's for a moment just talk about shame for a minute, and then we'll move to the other parts of your question. There is this wonderful story in Genesis that God looks at Adam and Eve and says, listen, you guys can do whatever. Go wherever. Just to that tree don't go. And if you do go near it, don't look at it. If you do look at it, don't look at the fruits. If you do, don't pick one. If you do, don't bite into it. If you do, don't chew. If you do, don't swallow. And eventually, of course, temptation wins. It is, after all, the tree of wisdom, so to speak, that should wisdom live inside you, you will have no need for the Bible, you will have no need for Jesus Christ or the Buddha. You can be autonomous, alone to yourself. You can make up the rules as you go along. Not like Jesus saying, you look at me, I am God. There is no need to go to a temple. Now, what happens is they do something that they were forbidden. God catches them. And the language is interesting because it doesn't say they were embarrassed. It says they were ashamed. If you and I are in a relationship, and if I catch you with lilac, now understand what this relationship means. It means that we share the same roof, we share the same bed, we have made certain promises, we have talked about the future together. That takes a lot of responsibility, lots of obligation, lots of identity, hopes, dreams, promises. And you fell to lilac. And in essence, what you're saying is all the things that you and I have done, it's irrelevant. I am hurt. You betrayed me, abandoned me. So the element of shame comes into being when there is a power up here. You're down here. There is this power, this commandment. We are married. We are friends. Kind of like what Gavin Newsom did some years ago to one of his best friends, okay? And all of us do this, you know? It's kind of what Ashley was talking about. I was 20, I was a hippie. I'm a 38, I'm a bit more realistic. And when I go back, I'm not embarrassed because I didn't have children at the age of 20. I'm actually ashamed. It's a funny way of looking at it, but that's the way it is. You know, because now you understand things you wish you had understood at the age of 20. Okay. So whenever the element of shame comes in, to some extent what you're saying is there is this higher moral order. There is this beautiful idea up here, and I'm supposed to live by it and through it and in it. But I brought the law down here where I am, filth, and I trampled all over it. Then you catch yourself. Whenever there is shame, there is always going to be guilt. And you feel guilty because you have shortchanged yourself. Always. Okay. And whenever there is guilt, there is always going to be remorse. You just feel really, really awful. Now remember, shame means that you've gotten caught. It's like when I get essays from students and it's like 98% AI generated. And I just copy and paste the message and send it back to them. And shame causes them to lie and create stories that are just ridiculous. You know, I just borrowed one word from YouTube, that's all. You know. So what you have is shame. Now, here's the thing. If you are an Inuit, you live in Eskimo, and you have multiple companions, the culture doesn't have a moral system that talks about having multiple companions as a shameful act. It's actually permissible. It's actually good for you because your energy is not localized in one single human being. Because the moment you put all of your energy in one single thing, you will soon grow tired of it. Unless you happen to be like Magnus Carlsen, where he injects his energy from the age 3 to about 35 into chess. And now, after 30 years, he says, I'm a bit bored now. Or someone like Bjorn Borg playing tennis from the age like 5 and quits at the age of like, I think 24. I've done 20 years, it's enough. Okay. So the deeper your commitment, the longer it's going to hold you. But at a certain point, it's going to break. Okay. So remember, shame has to do with you respecting something. And then you go against it. And then you either get caught from someone from the outside or you get caught from your own interior. Okay. And then shame comes to you. Then you'll feel guilty. Then you'll feel angry. Then after all the dust settles, you'll find yourself in a room dark and you just get kind of sad and depressed a little. And then you beat up yourself psychologically. Then you repent. Amir, I am so sorry. Amir, please forgive me. And then I begin to assume a masculine force. Like a king, now I can judge. Should I go back into the relationship? Should I walk away? You become feminine, passive. I become masculine, active. You have no power anymore in this relationship. Okay? Now, this does not mean that while you were with Lilac, you were not having fun or enjoying beauty. You were. I mean, that's what pleasure does. Any kind of pleasure. What pleasure does, it gets rid of the past, gets rid of the future, and it just sucks you in it. You're just fully in the present. Okay? Unless you have deep commitments and you're fully aware of those commitments, and while you're getting pleasure from this new event, you have pangs of conscience coming to the surface and saying, you shouldn't be doing this. Okay? The other thing, I suppose, is I think as we just move in to a different stage in life, our demands for ourselves, our demands from life, they begin to change. At the age of 20, she doesn't want children. She wants to live her life like a hippie, go out there and have a good time. Okay. At the age of 35, 36, 37, she becomes a bit more conscious of time, of her age, of the wrinkles, of getting old and being alone. And deep down, she may not be aware of this, or she may be aware, but she doesn't want to voice it. She looks around and she sees disaster everywhere. Relationships fall apart in no time. Marriages don't last. In the end, you're just on your own. And God forbid, if you have no family, if you have no children, who's going to take care of you? And these are like fears that live inside us, either because of psychological evolution or biological evolution. Who the hell knows? But she probably says, just in case my life with Janet doesn't work, at least I have Bobby to take care of, and he'll take care of me in old age. So it's not that you can't enjoy yourself doing things and be exposed or be linked to beauty out there. You can, one of the things that Dante, I think, understood once in a while on Telegram, I get these Persian songs, and they're pop, Hello. But because of the Persian culture and all that, the lyrics are sad, the voice is sad, and I create 50 copies and send it to myself. So as I'm sitting in the office or I'm walking, I just keep listening to this, and they bring about a certain kind of sadness, which I like. And out of that comes some sort of reflectiveness about this and that, again, which I like. And then I play it for the 51st time, and I no longer feel the same way. And then I have to take the trouble of going to my telephone, clicking on Telegram, and deleting 49 of them. Just keep one. Once in a while, listen to it. There isn't much out there that I can play with that has a long shelf life, which is really, really sad. I can tell you for many, many, many decades now, the only thing I wish for now is I want to run into a teacher of sorts, that I can have the same feelings I had when I was with Hussein, that I can walk into their house with fear and trembling, that my voice begins to shake, that I have all these questions. But my education is an obstacle. My experience of being in the classroom and yapping on for like hours, that has become an obstacle. I have become an obstacle to my own growth. There's so many things that keep me from having access to this thing called beauty that can kind of fuel me for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So I become like a prostitute. I sleep with this paragraph for 10 minutes and then it dies. And I sleep with that paragraph for 10 minutes, then it dies. And I watch this clip for 2 minutes and then it dies. They all signify beauty. They connect me to something. But in the end, I feel as if I am left more poor. I long for something, I don't know what it is. Dante's story is about our ability to reflect. I mean, one aspect of it. The moment you begin to think about anything seriously, it's like you're a fall from grace. I mean, that's what the tree in the Garden of Eden symbolizes to some extent. Don't think too much. Don't live an examined life. Because if you do live an examined life, you will not believe in the gods. You will not believe in the fairy tales given to you by the Quran or the Bible. You won't believe in romantic relationships. You won't believe in love. You won't believe in education being good for your soul. It doesn't work that way. And for the first time, you realize that life down here is truly sweat and blood. See, as long as you don't think about those things, reflect on them seriously. And the other thing you need to understand about your question is that it's rooted in the American culture, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can't go anywhere in this world, any country, where you'll find the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't exist. Life is not there to give you happy, unless you just are stupid. You know, anyone with some Asian experience and ability to reflect will tell you life is tough. You know, you work for 10 hours for a second of happiness. That's it. That's all you get. I mean, marriage is wonderful. You're planning for the wedding, the ceremony, you know, and then after 2 weeks, it's finished. You and I go on trips all the time. There comes a point you say, this is great, but I want to go home. You guys are so depressing. I like.
Made me curious. About idea of
You know, sometimes, forgive me, like I remember we had a customer at the car wash, and she kept harassing me, you know, can we like go and have food? Can we do this? Eventually, you know, I gave in because she had come to the car wash with her mother. Do you have to leave?
No.
Oh. And so in front of her mom, she says, Amir, do you want to have Chinese food tonight? I said, sure. And then she does something so ungodly. You know, after our dinner at, I think the name of the Chinese place was Chopsticks. It was on Sunrise and Douglas or something. She leans over and kisses me. I didn't like it at all. So out of kindness and generosity, I kiss her back. And we go on kissing for like 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. At a certain point, Hussein's face comes in. I'm filled with guilt and shame, you know. So, and we had no cell phones there, so I go to the nearest payphone after I drop her off and I say, Hussein, can I come to your house? Yeah. It's like 1 a.m. She says, what is it? What happened? It's 1 a.m. I was asleep. I was doing it with my wife. What are you doing bothering us? I went out and I kissed this girl. And then I broke down, you know, because it was a stage in my life where I wanted to, you know, like all the hippies, I wanted to live a certain kind of lifestyle. And this particular date and experience kind of ruined all that. And so shame and guilt. And then he smacks me on the head. And this is, you know, the difference between someone who's mature and someone who's not, someone who's a novice. Being the novice, he kind of taps me on the head and says, go wash your face and get the hell out of my house, go home. You didn't do anything wrong. But because I held Hussein way up here, and because I respected him, I wanted to be like him, that created a good amount of shame and guilt and remorse and repentance. The what? Stew. You know, you can't have red meat. Chicken is okay. Go ahead.
I think just curious about go to your notes, one field or one exploring lots of different options. Like, say one field expert or a whole bunch of things, but not necessarily.
If you want to be really, really good at anything, the tragedy is that you have to be good at a lot of things. In other words, if you want to understand something really, really well, you have to understand a lot of things really, really well. If you want to learn how to play chess really well, you have to study math a little bit. You have to study music a little bit. And there's a good chance that you're going to govern your life the way you play chess. Because you want to protect this thing called happiness, and you want to make sure that life doesn't checkmate your happiness. And so you become good at a lot of things. You know, if I was to be really, really interested in you, I can't just be interested in you. I have to be interested in your history, in the way you think about things, in the books you've read. Then I have to go a little further. I have to become interested in your parents. And all of a sudden you realize that I'm spending more time with your dad than I'm with you, because you are his fruit. The more I get to know him, the more I get a chance to get to know you. You know. If you want to understand philosophy, for example, I mean, if you want to be a really, really good philosopher, I'm not claiming that I am. I'm still quite a novice. But if you want to understand philosophy well, you have to understand psychology, because these are ideas that come in people's head. But people live in society, so you have to understand society. Society has hierarchy, it has politics, it has religion. So you have to understand politics, you have to understand religion. But society in it are filled with people. People have relationships. And then you have to understand, well, how does politics, advertisement, religion, what is the impact of those forces on people's lives? How do they keep a relationship going? What is the function of sex? And all of a sudden you say, you know, I just wanted to know Plato, but it doesn't work that way. You really have to understand a whole host of things. It is only through the proper monogamy that you can be a polygamist. You can be a polygamist and accept yourself to be a good monogamist. It doesn't work that way. You have to be good at one thing, and that one thing leads you to all sorts of places. You know, there are these people who just like traveling, and they like to go to Nebraska. There's something about the state that interests them, you know. And so they go to some place and they realize, oh, I want to go to like France now, then Portugal, then Spain. All of a sudden you realize one tiny passion about, you know, someone's culture, someone's food, leads them to be a traveler around the world. That's how it is. And I think the desire to be proficient, really, really good, it's a cross that you have to carry. And it gets heavier and heavier, because as you become good at one thing, you have no choice but to desire a whole host of things. Yeah. When you become interested in piano, there is something about you that longs for something. I don't know what it is. Okay? But in times of sadness or joy, piano becomes an extension of those particular feelings and emotions. Let's just call it beauty. And if you become really good at piano, you want your other areas in your life to also become as beautiful and as harmonious and melodic as piano is for you. So when it comes to relationship, when there is the wrong note that you play, it's the wrong conversation, it's the wrong time for sex, it's the wrong time to buy a car, then something about you jumps up and says, no, this is the wrong note. And it's all because of the way you play the piano. So, yeah, it's just good to be mediocre, because then there is nothing to carry. And we are very lucky because we are mediocre and most of the people in our lives are mediocre. William. Sure.
I saw the other day that they successfully brought back an endangered species for the first time. I think it's pretty cool, but as someone who's more religious, would you say that's just a giant middle finger to God?
No, it's just nice that something was brought back. Religion is about your ability to worship something. Some people worship nature the way someone goes to church and worship Jesus Christ. Some people don't spit when they're in a church. Some people don't spit when they go into nature. The guy who built the Golden Gate Bridge, he says, when you walk on these grounds, know that God is present. Be respectful. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it is. So I think if you're passionate about something and if you're honest about that particular passion, and it comes from a place inside you that's somewhat pure and clean, that's good enough. Some people just want to bring things back to life. Nothing wrong with that. Actually, Carmen. William?
What advice would you give to someone who wants to get more life experience? Go about doing that.
You can't give advice. Always go back to the prodigal son in the Gospels. If you really want to learn something, just do what you're doing. Be casual about your classes. Be casual about sex. Be casual about smoking and drinking. Eventually, life will turn you 40. And eventually, you will reflect. And eventually, you will be sad. And then you'll begin to think. And then you will have your own kids. And you will see them make the same mistakes that you did from the age 0 to about 40. And then you will try to discipline them, only to realize it doesn't go anywhere. And so you patiently wait and wait and wait and wait. If your parents are older, they'll just give up on you, because it takes energy to be patient and to wait. I'm going to tell you a couple of things a couple of times. You come to my office, you say, you're failing the class. I say, do ABCD. From that point on, if you don't do it, I'm not going to call you. It's finished. If I was 20, the story would be different, but I'm not 20. The other thing about advice is that this is not a question that haunts you. In other words, you don't stay awake thinking about how desperate you are for a GPS that can guide your life in a certain direction. Your question is casual. It's a great question, but your approach to the question is casual. It's meaningless. It's great, don't get me wrong. It's a great question, but the question doesn't belong to you because you don't feel the question. So, but let's just say you actually do mean the question and feel the question. Well, that particular question lives under an avalanche of 50,000 other questions. Why a math class about money, about this, about that. I have to spend a lot of time making sure that question you become more pregnant with that question and all the feelings it produces. Because you will forget. That's one of the things about us. We forget. And in order to avoid forgetfulness, you have to have alarm clocks. I wake up at 3 in the morning to get to campus. But I set my alarm clock to 2:30, 2:40, 3 o'clock, 3:10, 3:15, 3:16. And eventually I get up. Why? Because I will forget. That's what good teachers do. You need someone who keep reinforcing, advice. Let's say my advice to you is stay in school. Okay? Now, you have 3 jobs. You don't live at home. You smoke. You drink, and you have a relationship. But you also want to stay in school. You have too many things on your plate. You either get rid of school, or you get rid of a companion. You have to stop smoking and drinking. The problem with school is that it requires patience, sacrifice. You will not gain anything without sacrifice. You're not willing to sacrifice smoking weed because weed gives you pleasure. School gives you misery. Which one are you going to choose? Weed. Okay. So when advice is given, there also needs to be reinforcement. If you ask me for advice, I have to be part of your life. To keep pushing it into your skull until it becomes part of who and what you are. But you need to understand, I am from the Middle East. You're from America. Which means essentially you have to become like me. In other words, you have to have some Middle Eastern narratives inside you. And that takes a while. Because where I come from, education happens to be the most valuable thing you could ever have. Not here. Here near our car wash some 3 decades ago, there was a guy who was selling hot dogs. He made about $60,000 a month. Well, you're making that much money. Sure, you'll remain stupid in some ways, but you make a lot of money. You know, and we kept telling him, you know, how are your kids? Why don't you send them to go to school? He says, no, no, no. They're going to take over my business. So advice by itself is no good. I'm glad that you have had this moment of inspiration where you want to kind of find some GPS to your life. But after this class, you'll forget. It won't even haunt you. And because I know that what I say, and me in general, I'm forgettable, I'm not going to spend my time giving you things that eventually will be forgotten. I'll save my energy for my office. Stay in school. Anna.
After, like, if your trust has been broken.
Oh, it's finished. You're fucked.
Well, that answers my question.
First, it depends if your trust has been broken because of the branch, the personality. Let's say I give you a promise that I'm going to give you an A, and so you end up getting a C. Okay. That trust is not foundational to your essence. In other words, the core of you remains intact. Okay. If, on the other hand, you were bullied from the moment you were born, and that trust factor, faith factor, love factor have been destroyed, as a human animal, you will want to be in relationships. You will want to love. It's just normal and organic. You will want those things. The only problem is, your past is always going to obstacle you. Always. It doesn't care about your hopes and dreams and the silly stories you create in your head. None of those things matter. People at the age of 70 go seek therapy. Why? Because they have unresolved issues from the age 5, right? Now, the only way you can recover from the loss of faith or trust is, and I'm going to give you this analogy, okay? I have to like you, okay? And you have to like me. It can't just be one way. And knowing that you've been wounded, I have to sit somewhere and say, Amir, would you like to be abused for the next few months? Do you have the patience for that? Do you have the time for that? Are you willing to sacrifice your time, your youth, what little energy you have, your family perhaps, the weekends perhaps? Let's just say I come to the conclusion, yes. Now, remember, you will not know anything about yourself until you are wrestling. Okay? You will not know how good you are until you're in the system. Now, in other words, you can do shadow boxing in your room and you may think yourself to be Floyd Mayweather. But once you get into a ring, that's the test of your salt. Okay? Now, I'm making all these stories. Yes, I like Anna. Yes, I think I can be patient. Fine. I'm going to ask you to come to the office. I'll see if you're going to come or not. That shows me a few things. Then you do come. Then I'm going to see, are you coming 2 hours before, 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before? What's that scenario look like? Okay? If you come 2 hours before, that tells me you're making sacrifices. 10 minutes before, you're just casual. But I'll take the abuse. Okay? Let's say you come an hour before you and I sit, we talk, or we just sit, don't talk. Okay? Then I say, okay, not bad. I'll invite you to the house. We'll have some tea, we'll have some food, you'll get to know the family, other friends. Then I'm going to wait to see if you are taking this relationship casually or a bit more seriously. I promised myself that I will take your abuse. Now, you're not here to abuse me, but you will. That's what all people do, especially those who have been broken to some extent. But because I like you, because I see certain things about you, okay, and it doesn't mean I understand what they see, I just see some things. Okay. I keep having you over again and again and again and again. And maybe after 20 years, you say, oh, okay, maybe now I can open up. Now what was once broken is put back together, but it took about 20 years or 5 years. Everybody has a different timetable. Okay. If you are working with someone who is really, really good, they will not wait 20 years. Because, like Ashley, at the age of 20, life can give you dreams, and you can live by dreams. When you get to be 38, you no longer have dreams. What you have is realism. You become pragmatic. Okay. So if you're lucky enough to hang out with someone in their 20s and 30s and claims to be know-it-all, yeah, they'll wait for about 20 years. If you happen to be hanging out with someone who is 80 or 90 or 100, they'll give you about a month. If you don't shape up, that's it. Now, it doesn't mean it's a lost cause for you. What it does suggest, though, is the more you accumulate garbage inside your system, the more difficult it is to get rid of it. Okay? You know, at the age of 20, it's not difficult to empty your trash bin. At the age of 40, it may be a little bit more difficult. So, it's always possible. It depends on your capacity, it depends on the people you're working with. And no one really knows until they're tested. I mean, the friend I was telling you about, she truly wanted her marriage to work. She really did. But against the backdrop of that experience, she's a great doctor. Still single, and about 55. Martel?
Earlier you were talking about, cheating on that LA guy.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking about is the way people do things show who they are, right?
No.
What do you mean by that?
You know how swords used to be made? You get this, if you've seen Rambo 4 or 5, it's like a movie that supposedly takes place in Burma. Okay, so what you have is this kind of rough piece of steel, and John Rambo puts it into fire. It gets red hot, brings it out, hammers the hell out of it, then puts it in cold water, then fire, then hammer, then water. Does this over and over and over again. And what it does, as you hammer it, it thins it. It stretches it, thins it, and then you can shape it. And it's probably a 2-month process. Okay, I think human beings are very much the same way. Because we lose our instinctual abilities very, very early on in life. You know, and this is not a sort of culture that believes in anything in a very serious way. All of us are kind of left floating around, trying to figure out where exactly they belong in the grand scheme of things. If you happen to be in India, for example, you'll get married at the age of 16. It's not even up to you. If you happen to, again, be born in India, you're going to be a Sikh or a Hindu. You don't have a choice about like standing somewhere saying, I'm an atheist. At least the way it used to be, okay? So most of the cultures around, ancient cultures, from the moment you're born, they give you a GPS. You can be a kid and you can goof around for about 2 years. The moment you hit the age 3 or 4, you're in the kitchen cooking and cleaning and you're going to do laundry. That's the way it is. Okay? Now, in a culture such as this, what usually happens is you go out with a boy, that's a fire and hammer and water. Then you go out with a girl. And then you become celibate. And then you go to school. Then you get a job. You know. Then you get married. Then you divorce. Then you get depressed. Then you get married. Then you divorce. And these are the things we go through. And just because you go through one episode, it doesn't mean that episode is who and what you are. What it does suggest, though, is that first, life is tough. It's very confusing. Second, we are a puzzle. Third, there is no one out there protecting us. Every man lives on his or her own island. Okay. The other thing is you shouldn't ask novices to hold on to a promise that they made because they are a novice. The way, like, one of the things you'll understand as parents, as Ashley will soon learn, is that it'd be stupid for you to spend $100 on a pair of shoes for a 1-year-old. Because the following week, from the size 6, they're going to jump to 12. Okay? So what you do is you go to dollar store and you buy like shoes for $1. Okay? There comes a point where your physical body no longer grows. The problem that we have is emotionally we grow, intellectually we grow, spiritually we grow, and every physical setting creates new experiences. Every new experiences creates new emotions. Those new emotions combat with the old emotions. So in one of the sayings of Muhammad from the Islamic tradition is, if you look inside the human being, what you have is a battlefield. Now, they're not going to come out and tell it to you. Most people don't even understand this. But there is this conflict that lives inside all of us all the time. Because you want to hold on to the promise, but there is other part of you that says, experiment, grow, learn, understand. And anything that's new is always going to combat the old. And eventually one is going to win. Okay. So if I am hanging out with you, if you and I are a couple, okay, and we live together, and we do everything together, and we're married and have children, and all of a sudden I look at Justin, and he reminds me of John Travolta. Okay, so you go on a trip, I get his number, and we hang out. It doesn't mean I don't like you. It doesn't mean just because I've crossed certain lines that our relationship should come to an end. To come to an end. Our understanding of a lot of things about ourselves and life are profoundly limited. I mean, look. Remember the life of Malcolm X from the age 0 to about maybe 20? Imagine if some congressperson, some senator would say, why are we spending all of our money on this person? Put him under the guillotine. Hang him. Give that money to a homeless person. Give it to Laney College. But few episodes happen in his life and he becomes a prophet of the 20th century. First for his own people, then for every people. If your question is just because someone crossed a line, should you go back into the relationship? That's a different story.
More person does something, I accept that.
Oh, no. You understand human nature, but you walk away from the relationship. Only because you're future oriented. Only because you don't want to walk on eggshells. Only because you don't want to have regrets later on in the future. None of us in this class enjoy building a house on sand. But what we don't realize is most people who walk into our lives are sand. You can't really depend on them for too much. Ashley?
I do have one little question.
It's little,
Superficial.
of course.
I noticed that when you refer to a lot of things about your own culture, you say Persian, like the language, and I always thought that the language was called Farsi. And I wonder if I'm wrong.
No. It's Farsi.
Semantics. It's like saying Espanol.
Yeah.
Persian.
Yeah, when I say Persian, it reminds you of like these Persian cats. They're fluffy, they're cute. You want to hold them.
Persian rugs, beautiful.
Persian men.
Beautiful.
Ariana? Oh, you guys. Skyler?
Yeah.
Jason?
I'm not really sure if it relates to philosophy.
Doesn't matter.
I feel overwhelmed, like when life feels like it's beating you down, and there's too much to worry about. Like, how do you process that?
You survive it the best you can. I mean, I can give you some fluff, but it's just fluff. If you're angry about something, the idea of going somewhere and asking someone, how do you overcome this anger? Well, you're just angry right now. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the very fact that you can come to class and find it to be an oasis of sorts and just say, by the way, life is shit and it's beginning to smell and, it's beginning to kind of just, everything about my life is beginning to smell bad. What do I do with it? You can't do much. It has taken you a while to create the sort of life that you have. And you also live in a society that has all these forces, being imposed upon you. There isn't much you can do. The only, perhaps, suggestion would be, with a lot of sacrifice and reflective and, mindfulness, is you place your physical body in environments that lessen your burden. But that, again, requires the number of alarm clocks that remind you, don't take a math class right now. You're just doing a bit too much. So there are some temptations that you have to resist. Eventually, like the rest of us in this class, you'll learn. I know. Carmen, you sure? What time is it?
Just 3 minutes.
Okay, let's do like 3 quickies. How about just 1 quickie? Yeah.
Where'd you go for your honeymoon?
In and out. Alameda.
Exciting.
What?
Exciting. No, it's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, they have great burgers. I mean,
What'd you get?
we got number 2, cheeseburger, fries, and a medium Coke. That's it? Anna?
Favorite color?
Anyone else?
I actually really want to know it.
Yeah. You know how it is. Irvin. The what? Yeah. I'll tell you a story about colors though. Someone goes to Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, and says to him, there is no color higher than black. Black is the most valuable color on the face of this planet. Muhammad looks at him and says, if that's so, why does my hair turn white? Yeah.
Are you pro-life or pro-choice?
Whoa.
Am I a pro-life or pro-choice? Couple of things. The way men deal with this news that their companion is pregnant is very different than the way women deal with it. That's number one. And the tragedy is most of the people who are making decisions about these 2 different platforms are men who know nothing about life. Okay? And these are mostly white men who know even little, much less about life than other people of color. Second, sometimes you plan for pregnancy. Most often it is unplanned, especially these days after the 1960s with the invention of contraceptives. Because the moment you have condoms, what you also have is sex having a different meaning to it. It begins to feel different. It becomes a bit more casual because there are certain things about sex that you can protect yourself against, i.e. pregnancy. So now that sex is casual and you approach it casually, and all the sacred elements that has been around for thousands of years are no longer in it, sometimes you get this news that your companion is pregnant. Okay? Now, how old are you? How much money you got? Do you have a job? Do you have health care? Are your parents around? Do you have a support system? The idea that you're just a stupid Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist and you read some passage in some Bible you don't really understand, and all of a sudden you categorize yourself as, a lifer. That's just a silly business to have. And the reason is, eventually these kids have to go into life. And if they don't have the proper tools, you'll see all these tents, they'll end up in one of them. So there are lots of things to consider. It's not a black and white. They really are. It's a world into its own. It's a tough decision to make. And should a woman choose to terminate a pregnancy, as a man, you will never understand what that means. Never in a million years. You can feel bad, you can feel sad, she can talk to you, but you will never get it.
What constitutes human life?
Oh, I don't know about those things. Consciousness and stories and... I think George Carlin said it best. Republicans are pro-life, but the moment life comes out, they look at this brand new life and say, you're on your own. Get your own job, get your own health care, get your own parents. So, have a nice day. See you Thursday.